The Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport presents a virtual art exhibition in honor of George Simon. Welcome to this year's art exhibition. To commemorate Amerindian Heritage Month, the month of September has been regarded as a very auspicious time when all of Guyana celebrates our first people. Coinciding with this year's theme, fostering traditional practices for a safe environment, the Ministries of Culture, Youth and Sport are doing all they can to ensure the safety of everyone. Even as we continue to battle the coronavirus pandemic, every year, many look forward to the art exhibition hosted by the Castellani House in honor of our most prolific Amerindian artists. Well, this year, we could not disappoint our art enthusiasts as we present to you a virtual exhibition.
Warm greetings, everyone, and welcome to this year's Amerindian Heritage Month exhibition, one that we annually will hold at the National Gallery of Art, Castellani House. This year's exhibition comes to you virtually, and we're dedicating this one to George Simon, who we all know that has passed recently. So this year's exhibition is titled A Tribute to George Simon. Now, George Simon is an artist, also an anthropologist and an archaeologist. He's one of the best mentors well known in Guyana, especially among the young people who are part of the groups that he has formed, one major group especially. George Simon in the past was able to influence quite a few of his own clansmen, his Lakona Arawak tribesmen, in the village of St. Cuthbert's Mission, and they formed this group called the Lakona Arawak Art Group. From that group stemmed the Moving Circle of Artists group, which has grown and is today filled with lots of young people and even expanding beyond just the Amerindian heritage and portions of Amerindian background or descent. So you have young artists from those School of Art from university who joined up with this group, and they are exhibiting the works and showing what they've learned and the influence that they've gained from George Simon over the years. George Simon was able to change the landscape of visual art since the 1980s. What he did was worked with his folks, his fellow artists, and they've identified the indigenous symbols and world languages and so on that is at their disposal, and was able to harness from it and to create the work of art. George Simon, by himself, being an archaeologist, was able to influence his work by the things that he did in the past. He was able to use those archaeology sites and the appearance of the things that are dug up and found and apply it to his work. If you look at some of his work, you see those overlapping and overlaying of paint and symbols and designs that give you a sense of things that are being dug or harnessed from the ground. Now, George Simon was able to influence his fellow clansmen, as I mentioned earlier, to use these symbols to the best effect or the best way possible to tell their stories. So if you look around in this exhibition, you'll see that the works portray the heritage of the Amerindians. And the works are from a number of artists who you'll eventually be seeing on this virtual exhibition, who will be speaking about what they've done with their art and the views on George Simon. Some artists like Winston Craig, also Hussein, Pakaya, Nigel Butler, who is not here with us, and a few others. So we ask you to please bear with us, with the reason for this season. It's not pleasant for any one of us, but we are finding ways to meet you and to bring these exhibitions to you in the form of virtual. So until we're able to come out to view the exhibition in the way we are accustomed to, please do enjoy this exhibition and enjoy the words from the artist and their views on George Simon, who we dearly miss today.
My name is Pakaya James and I'm 25 years old. I would say I started getting into art when I was a child, more so due to my mom. She's a very creative person and have always been that way. But my introduction fully into art would have happened during high school, at Tutorial High School, where Ms. Donette was our visual arts teacher, and she was the one who first taught us about the basics of art, color theory, symmetrical, asymmetrical balance, the very basics. And from there is when I first started falling in love with arts. My intention was never actually to get into the art field, but there's no running from it once you're in it, and it's not something that I actually, like I said, not something that I wanted to get into, but it's something that I fell in love with along the way. I practiced painting and doing art, mostly self-taught and on my own, for a couple of years. But like most Guyanese kids, even as creatives, we have to eventually decide whether we want to pursue our creative paths or get a more serious career or life path. Usually doctors, lawyers, businesswomen, businessman. And following along that path, I wanted to be a doctor, but that didn't happen. And then obviously I went into becoming an artist, and there was a period of time where I was bouncing between the two. And I sat down one day and I decided I'm going to make a decision, and that is when I first painted Gaia. And I was like, if this painting came out well, then I'm going to be an artist, and it came out beautifully. And from there I decided that I'm going to be an artist, and I focused more on the arts, became more self-taught, internet studies, Google, YouTube, many artists and their works, and went from there. For this particular painting, I've been working on it for quite some time, as with most of my works. I have a tendency to work with paintings and feel them out, and if it is that they no longer feel a particular way or I feel stuck with them, I put them down. I really can't say for how long. It doesn't bother me for how long, because when I come back to them, I come back to them with a fresh pair of eyes, a new mindset, exposed to new ideas and creativity. And so with this painting, I've been doing it for some time, and I decided to pick it up back about a month ago. And so the colors have changed, the hair has changed, the person, face, the muse, everything about it has altered, has changed. And I think that's the beautiful thing about it. It is, and well, not just with this painting, but with any creative work or with any painting, it is constantly evolving with the artist and as they develop through life and on their path. So for this particular painting, it is titled Bloom, and it has more to do with your development along your path and being at peace with where you are in your journey and where you are on your life path, regardless of where you stand. So she's sitting there and, well, floating, because she is at peace and she is mindful of where she is, but she is not worried about it. She is right where she's supposed to be. So everything about her is going out, it is blooming.
Good day. My name is Alex Joseph. I'm from the I'm born in Pomeroon area, region number 2. But I discovered that I was talented when I was like 10 years old. And thereafter, many years after, I met a Guyanese renowned artist by the name of Stanley Greaves, who encouraged me to enlist in the Borough School of Art. This shot was taken at my cell. It was like 5:30 early morning, and these cows. I was going to the shop, and the mist was going away, gradually going away. And in my path were these cows, and they were like, they didn't want to make me pass. And I actually spoke to these guys. I see them as like spirits in a cow form. And I asked them, I said, may I have a pass? I'm new here, I know, but please, I need to get something at the shop. Do you know that these guys actually moved away? Like they had a little meeting. I see them looking at each other and so, and they said, yeah, if to say, well, he's new here, let Alex pass, you know? So they gradually moved away, and I went to the shop and I bought my stuff. And when I came back, I didn't see them. They all had disappeared. I looked in the bushes and so, and I didn't see any of them. But I strongly believe that spirits exist, but they come in different forms, in like animal form more or less. So that's one of my beliefs. This image here was actually influenced by George Simon charcoal work. I was privileged to see George at work when he had a studio, using it at his house and studio at the same time. He did some really amazing pieces in charcoal, and I was privileged to see him at work. Those images derived from the model. I think the model was his wife, his first wife. So this piece here is an imaginary piece. It's from an experience I had years ago, and I call it Forbidden Love. It's personal, but I consider it my masterpiece, and masterpieces or good works of art need to be seen by the public. I always believe, why hide it? It's a technique that I use is the breaking up of the human form at this instance. As you would notice, it's nothing distinct. It's very obscured, and it's a technique that I use when I'm doing a work of art. I always leave space for questions. I'm never direct and never distinct. So the viewer now would come and look at this, and they would ask questions. There's always a space for questions, and they would tell themselves, well, there's something missing from this work of art. So they would leave and they would go and maybe have a look at other pieces and show, and then it's a must that they would come back. That's what I like. That makes a work of art interesting.
Yeah, my name is Jasmine Ali. I'm born in Guyana, year 3rd August 1953. I grew up in South Georgetown, went to St. Pius 10th RC School, and from there on I went to Guyana Oriental College, and I left Guyana and went into deep South America, whereupon I acquired knowledge of the Spanish and Portuguese language and became very enthusiastic about the works of the pre-Columbian arts. And this is what inspired me to become an artist, because I wanted to tell the story of our people from my point of view, as an artist, because the Europeans had already fostered their own concept of art upon us. And in this way, I could recreate art, as I see it, art in resistance. This work is titled From Columbus to Castro. And it looks at the destruction of the indigenous civilization, and it comes up to the point in which the revolution in Haiti, right? The Haitian revolution, there's a part from the conquest to revolution. And we look at parts of the American Revolution as well as the Cuban Revolution, Castro in 1959. All of these are indigenous of people engaged in the struggle. The colors are representative of the flags of countries, and these here on the outline are the resistance against imperialism as such.
Well, my name is Winston Craig. I was born in 1967 in a wee little village. But to be more specific, there's a creek in that village that is called Kapowari. I was actually born in that creek back in 1967. I grew up in that environment. I went to school at Karya. Karya is the overall village. Former President Ramatar came from Karya. So we got a few notables coming out of Karya. From a very early age, I realized that I had a gift for making things. I've always found myself with a sharp edge. Anything that had a sharp edge, I was always whittling away at something with. I would even make little knives out of the old sardine can. We called it cane pond sardine way back then. I would make little knives from that. My grandfather saw that and he bought me a penknife. And I would whittle away at stuff. So if you're asking me when I started this started way before I was even conscious of what it is that I was doing. And after high school, I attended the Guyana Secondary School on the Escriba Coast. I left there in 1985, and I started at Burroughs School of Arts, and I did the diploma there. I graduated in 1989, and I suppose I would venture to say that my career as an artist began in 1989. I have never done anything else, never done any other work but make sculpture. At first, when I started Burroughs, I figured that I was a painter. In high school, I was always the best art student that we had. I was naturally a gifted draftsman, a painter. So I figured I was a painter when I entered Burroughs. But then I realized that every time I drew something or every time I painted something, I wanted to turn it around. I wanted to go behind and see what it might look like from a different angle. So I rolled that image in my head like a three-dimensional thing in my head all the time. That is when I figured that I was actually a sculptor. I thought in 3 dimensions. Now, Discovery was the major piece of my graduation exhibition. It was done in mahogany, and that particular piece was my first major statement as an artist. And we come all the way through the years from 1989 to now, 2020, and the staff behind me is one of my latest pieces. Now, I particularly like this because it makes a connection from where I started in to where I am now. And over the years, one of my greatest inspiration would have been nature. The environment which I grew up in sort of impacted me and influenced me in a very, very profound way. So that the piece that you see behind me is called From the Earth to the Sky, the Rod of Connection. It comes from the bottom, which represents the root of all things. We are all organic matter, and we are physical, and we are also spiritual. And we all are part and parcel of this entire universe. We are grounded here, but when we are gone, our spirit returns to wherever it came from. The next piece that we looked at, which is called Fighting for Global Peace. You look at the imagery that are there, you have a dove, you have an eagle, and you have a snake. I'm just using imagery that we can understand to depict the sort of idea, this concept that I'm trying to get across. So if you look, you're going to see that there's a dove sitting on the wings of this huge, powerful bird, which is the eagle. And then the eagle and the serpent is locked in battle. These represents the two opposing forces. And generally, I mean, that's basically what life is. You're constantly locked in a battle. We will never know what good is except we know what bad is. We will never know what light is except we know what darkness is. So these are two things that part and parcel of the same whole.
This year, we are proud to present the work of Guyanese painter and archaeologist George Simon. Born in St. Cuthbert's Mission, Mahaica River in April of 1947, George Simon grew up to be a very creative and artistic young man, who later pursued a bachelor's degree in fine art and graduated with honors from the University of Portsmouth in England, and then gained a master's degree in field and analytical techniques in archaeology from the University College in London.
When I met George in the early 80s, his work went through a transformation. First, it appeared as though he was dealing with an abstract tendency, and then he went into landscaping, and thereafter he went into archaeological studies and a kind of philosophical studies, and dealt into legends in the midst of the indigenous people. And he became so well acquainted with it that he figured that he could well, by way of his work, right, could have preserved the indigenous culture, a message of the indigenous people to the world outside of him. George went on to form, in the latter parts of the 90s, the Moving Circle of Artists, in which he brought some of very talented young indigenous artisans to Georgetown, in which they took part in a September exhibition of the indigenous people. And this he continued for many years until he fell ill and was not able to do so in 2019. And he's no longer with us in this year, 2020, in which a virtual exhibition will be done in his honor. In 1987, he won the National Visual Arts Competition, and then he went on to winning a next award, an international award. And in 2017, 2018, he won the Guyana Prize Award from New York, and a Lifetime Award from the Guyana Cultural Association, New York. In 2017, he also won the first prize in the new Guyana Visual Arts Competition in the painting category. And he got the gold medal. But in 2016, I had an accident. It affected my head, and I couldn't carve as a sculptor for a long time because I had problems. And George encouraged me, as he encouraged me to go to Paraguay, where he was at a point in time, and he said that you got to develop your ability as a painter now, so you can adequately perform in Latin America because those guys are very good guys. So He encouraged me from that time on that I started painting more than sculpture. And afterward, I was able to take part in many exhibitions, including one an international world exhibition in which I got an award. And I also won in 2018 the second prize in the National Visual Arts Competition. So he was a great friend to me and a very inspirational person, that inspired me to continue along this path.
Unfortunately, I did not have the honor and the privilege to have met Mr. George Simon, but we did have communication via Facebook and Messenger, and he was a very, very wonderful man in terms of guidance along my art style and creative inspiration. He was very impactful in not only my mediums, but my inspirations for my artwork, in making me a bit more focused in terms of my choice of muses and working with my mediums and working with my inspirations, I guess. But I would say that George Simon was impactful not because of the works that he left behind, although those will stand for decades within the creative and artistic community of Guyana, but more so for the person that he was. He was more than just an artist. In starting the Moving Circle of Artists, I would say that his intention, or at least as relayed to me by him, was for it to be open to more than just artists, for it to be a space for anybody, regardless of their path or their chosen career in life, to come and experience what it is like in Guyana as a creative. So you travel to places like Surama and you get to be immersed in the culture and immersed in that experience, but you don't just go there to experience them, you leave something of your passion, of yourself behind. So, and I think that would have been something that he embodied as a human being. Regardless of what he was into, he left something of himself behind, as well as learning from others.
Mr. Simon has won several awards, starting with the National Award, the Golden Arrow of Achievement, that was bestowed upon him in 1998 for his exceptional contribution to social and community work among the Amerindian peoples of Guyana, and for exceptional contribution to the arts and culture in Guyana. Over the years, George Simon has also worked very closely with Amerindian communities, but more importantly, he has positively impacted the lives of many young artists around the country.
In 79, 2 years at art school, I met George Simon, and we connected almost immediately. I don't know if it's because of the Lacona, we both Arawaks or what, or because of the artistic side of it. But we connected almost immediately. George had just came back from the UK after finishing his studies, along with some other guys who were on scholarship, namely Keith Agard, Alistair Douglas, Errol Brewster. I know George to the extent of the social aspect of it. We imbibed. The school was then in Old Road Eccles. We socialized, myself, him, and Keith Agard. During my art school studies, many a days we had liquid lunch by Auntie Sabo. She had a little shop in Old Road Eccles there. We had some fun during my studies at the art school. But George took his teaching very seriously. You know, he was very serious about that. So despite we socialized as student and tutor, when we went back in the classroom, there was that seriousness about his work.
Okay. So when I started art school back in 1989, that's Borough School of Art, all that I was exposed to before that was art in secondary school, and basically my natural inclination and interest in making stuff, making artistic things. I first met George around maybe 1986. He was never my formal tutor, but I remembered him doing a series of work, and he was so, I admired his work ethic. He was so dedicated to what it is that he was doing and very methodical in the way he worked. And over the years, I've seen George grow from that point to becoming one of the greatest master painter that Guyana would have ever produced. And he would have impacted me and impacted many other youngsters like myself at the time. And even in his passing, he still continues to impact this generation, and I'm sure he's going to impact the next in a very, very profound way. So George has left a legacy. He has left a standard which we as younger artists in the field can only aspire to. So we can challenge ourselves to do as well as George did, and that would be a good challenge for us.
I'd like to talk a little bit of Mr. George Simon and the work that he's been doing with young people and his interest in the Rupununi area in particular. George, as you know, in around 1987 had trained 25 people in the Makuri St. Cuthbert's Mission, and out of that exercise, several artists have emerged. And around 1995, George and the group of what became the Moving Circle of Artists recognized that it was important to take their skills to Amerindians and indigenous people, as we now call them, to those people and to do workshops with them. And over, I would say, the last 2 decades, that idea has grown, it has matured, and there's been experience with that. Over those years, George has guided that process. And so in 1995, he was in the Rupununi with a group of artists, including his brother Ozzy, and they were resident at Rockview Lodge, which is in the North Rupununi. They also did workshops in Surama, and went back to participate in the Rupununi Music and Arts Festival. And that has happened more recently. Using those experiences, George has encouraged artists from the Moving Circle of Artists to participate and to continue these outreach activities and to seek funding, small funding, so that the artists can undertake these exercises. Starting from 2017, George, along with the artists, came up with some programs that they could take to the interior. In 2017, there was a workshop in Paramakatoy, and there was an anthropologist, Mr. Terry Jennick, along with Mr. Andrew Campbell, who has an interest in archaeology. And they were in the Pacaraimans, and they conducted a storytelling workshop, and some artwork came out of that, particularly based on the understanding of the role of the jaguar in the lives of indigenous peoples. That very year, a group of artists went to Riwa, and they were hosted by the village council there, and Riwa has an ecotourist, a thriving ecotourist business. And so the artists spent a few weeks there, and they conducted a workshop with young people. They contributed to the artwork at the Riwa Lodge. And out of that, I think they were encouraged to do more work. We have had artists return to communities like Yupakari. They've been to Surama again to work with young people. They've been asked to visit some of the Rupununi tourist resorts and lodges, and they have worked there. So Mr. Simon has seen the Bina Hill Institute area and the North Rupununi as a place where we can continue to advance the work of the Movement Circle of Artists in that area. We had people who anchored the program there, myself, Ms. Hadi Asgar and Ms. Rina Rufino, all members of a team that supports the Movement Circle of Artists. And so we've been able to monitor some of the activities that have occurred in that area. So this is how George worked with young people. He understands it's difficult for young people to develop the kinds of leadership, organizing skills, and their creative arts. And so he put this into a program that we can now follow, and we can combine it with work related to archaeology, to the environment. And so some of our young people participate in those workshops, but we bring talented and knowledgeable artists and researchers to support that work. So it's an interesting development for young people. You become more sensitized to your own culture, the environment, and what's around you. Plus, you build those skills. And artists who are already experienced, they are the ones who lead the workshops and guide it. So right now, for our exhibit that's going on virtually at the Castellani House, the most recent workshop occurred in the past 2 months. And the products from that workshop are there to be displayed this year, 2020, as part of George's legacy.
Thank you for joining the virtual exhibition, and we urge you to continue to stay updated on all of our upcoming virtual events and share them on your social media pages as we continue to celebrate Amerindian Heritage Month. See you again soon. This was brought to you by the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport.